All right, all right, all right.
Hey there, nerds. Jimmy here.
And I'm James.
So we're with our flashback movie review, and this weekend we saw
Dazed and Confused.
a fan favorite from Richard Linklater in the 90s. I loved this movie when it came out and needed James to see it. James wanted to see it. Why?
All right, all right, all right.
He wanted to find out what Matthew McConaughey's famous reference was. I was happy to oblige. What'd you think?
I thought it was brilliant. It's another one of those comedies that's just funny to be funny, and I thoroughly enjoyed the way it doesn't have a specific protagonist or like a goal. It's just a slice of life movie about a bunch of kids in the 70s on the last day of school. I thought it was tons of fun seeing like effectively in this small town that like every rural America town is like, there's still like this wide variety of people and just like the flavors of life that you don't really get with big blockbuster movies anymore.
One of the things that I never noticed in this movie that James pointed out right away because it pertains to him, he goes, my goodness, this movie's full of gingers. And I had not noticed that. But yes, you have, I forgot her name, Giovanna Ribisi's sister. You have Cole Hauser. And then you said there were several in the background. They're just walking around with red hair. And I'm like, huh.
It was weird because as someone who has copper red hair, you notice people who have hair of a similar color, and so watching the movie, it's like, why are there so many gingers? It's not just me, right? And it was interesting,
which got me to thinking like, what's going on in Texas? Yeah, a lot of gingers. So the other fun part was, as we referenced in Wayne's World, James had to ask me Dana Carvey and where he came from. Well, this had a lot of actors who have gone on to become famous.
Very much so.
Matthew McConaughey, which is hilarious because he doesn't look like anything like he looks now.
No.
And the big one, which was hilarious, because I said, James, you recognize him. And it took him a good 3 or 4 segments before he caught on to Ben Affleck as Banyan.
I sat there, I was like, holy shit. He is so young in that, and yet he is inherently Ben Affleck. And it was mind-blowing. And another observation we had was an uncanny amount of Kevin Smith overlap with a lot of the actors and actresses.
Joey Lauren Adams, who, of course, was in Mallrats and then Chasing Amy. Obviously, Ben Affleck was another big one. There was one more where we were like, oh,
he was the twin of the dude in Mallrats. We went over that. It was he played Pink.
Oh, yeah. Jeremy London and Jason London. I was like, oh, wow, this is just interesting correlation that somehow Richard Linklater and Kevin Smith have this spiritual connection.
Yeah, it was cool to see.
Which is funny because they were both huge independent filmmakers in the 90s.
And what I find the funniest is a lot of my humor about history is based in making fun of like the 50s, 60s, 70s. I shouldn't, but a lot of nom jokes, especially like, we shouldn't have done that. A lot of my humor with that history is like, don't do nom. Don't do that. Also, bits and pieces of like Reagan was 70s, 80s, right? I have to
Ronald
make sure.
Reagan as president was 1980 to 88.
Stuff like that. It's just the funny haha. So I got the history. I got a lot of that. But something I was genuinely surprised with was the music choices, because I didn't really think about what decades my music was based in and what music I listened to until I like systematically sorted them out by like the amount of songs that came from a decade. And it was like 70s was the most by like 1 compared to the 80s. And watching the movie, it's like, I know most of all of these songs. And it's funny to me as someone who was born in 2005, in 2023, listening to almost exclusively pre-2000s music, and then watching a film set in the 90s, filmed in the 90s, set in the 70s, with 70s music, it's like, why does this have to be that deep?
Because I've done a good job.
He has.
But it was funny to see this movie. I probably haven't seen it in 10, 15 years, maybe even longer, because I don't think I've watched it in your lifetime. And watching it again as an adult now and seeing the nerds in the car, Adam Goldberg, Anthony Rapp, and Miss Ribisi. I'm so sorry. I wish I could remember your name. interact, and you're like, oh my gosh, I definitely touched a little bit on that world with some of the things they talk about. And it was so funny. They're driving around, last day of school, they're done with school, they're going to be seniors, they're definitely the nerds, and they're having a conversation of, she read an article where Gerald Ford's presidency and some of the mistakes can be attributed to his head injuries as a football player. And I'm like, that's not terribly different than stuff we discuss at Nerd Alert. And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, cool. But then you clearly have the jocks that are going around with their paddles, hazing the incoming freshmen. James literally was like, did that happen in your era? And I'm like, no, by the time we got to the 90s, we got some hazing because I played soccer, but nothing along the lines of that.
Yeah, probably because it's illegal now. What I definitely, nearing the end of the movie, I said to my father, I'm like, we both know I'd be in the car full of nerds. That's without question. I thoroughly enjoyed the story of, I cannot remember his full name, but Pink.
Randall Pink Floyd.
Randall, I loved his story because that's, in a way, both of us, we identify with both groups. Of course, I fit in better with one group, as we just discussed, but I kind of get that like transience between groups, is that it's like, you're friends with everybody. And I love his emotional journey of, well, do I want to sign this piece of paper that effectively says I can't do what I want and enjoy my life, all for a greater purpose I really don't believe in? Or do I sign my life away? And I thought it was a beautiful underlying story with it was a coming of age. It's like, do I do the things I want to do, spend the time with the people I genuinely care about, or do I put on a facade and spend time with people I kind of care about? And I really liked his choice at the end, where he decided to stay with the people he genuinely cared about.
And went off and got Aerosmith tickets.
That's
but
true.
It really is, again, as an adult watching it, and I guess I knew this a little bit back in high school and why I loved it so much, it's standing up to authority. And it's sort of ironic that, again, I've got to learn her name, but Ribisi's sister was talking about how, well, the every other decade theory, and that the 50s were obviously lame, the 60s were cool, the 70s were lame, yet the message in this film is rebelling against authority, which is what the 60s is known for. And as a history major, I just want to point out, people say 60s. Woodstock was 69. So it really was the end of the era, decade, when these things were going on. Vietnam ended in 75 officially. So this movie set in 76. So it was right there in the tail end of the draft not happening anymore, those sort of things. So it really is a very interesting timepiece to look at, which I did not recognize when I saw it when I was in high school.
And as our mantra goes, we love to fight authority. Of course, authority always wins, but we always come out grinning.